Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and if you are looking for some reasoned objectivity, a level-headed approach to what's going on these first couple days of free agency, you have come to the right place because there is a lot of sky is falling, crying, whining, complaining, claiming the Niners are going to be terrible, nonsense and discourse out there, social media and otherwise, and we are going to explain it all, why some players left, why some players came, why some players were pipe dreams, and we're going to discuss why 2025 is not a rebuilding year for the 49ers. Makes for great discourse and engagement farming on social media. But if you think about it logically, and that's what we're going to do here, that is not the case. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about what happened. We're just going to run through it quickly. I know that you guys are on top of the goings and comings of 49ers players. We're going to discuss why it happened and what it means for the team in 2025 and potentially moving forward. Nothing should be a huge surprise in terms of the approach San Francisco took the first couple days of free agency. I'm recording this on Thursday evening, so you had Monday, Tuesday, legal tampering period. Wednesday, really the beginning of free agency, I guess it was at noon at Eastern time, continuing today, and will obviously continue through the beginning of the season and beyond. But John Lynch at the Combine told us what we saw thematically these past 4 days was going to happen. They wanted to get younger. They were the oldest team in the NFL last year. They wanted to get cheaper. They wanted to do a little bit. He initially said the word reset, and then he said recalibration in terms of the roster structure and cost. They were top 3 or 4 in cash spending the past handful of years. And I know we don't care about that. It's not our money. It's the York family's money, and they're billionaires. There's only so much we can cry for folks whose income starts with a B, not even an M, B for billions. But at some point, it becomes financially irresponsible to keep handing out or agreeing to contracts that either are not smart, are not really in the best interest of the team, short or long term, or some that just don't make some sense at all. And I keep going back to the extensions that or restructures that Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey got before the season started. McCaffrey first coming off of his offensive player of the year in 2023. And then we didn't know about the bilateral Achilles tendonitis yet and the Madden curse and all that stuff that was going to happen. But he was scheduled to make $12 million a year, but he had no guaranteed money in 2025, 2026. And he didn't have a contract in 2027, but the Niners added on to that. Instead of just guaranteeing him some money, they gave him a 20% raise each year. He went from, I think his cap hit or average annual value wasn't 12 million, 16 million, went up to 19 and guaranteed money. And he's since been eclipsed by Saquon Barkley, who's now at $20 million a year. To me, another stupid contract or extension. Played his first year in Philadelphia, offensive player of the year, won the Super Bowl, a lot of mileage on the tires. So yeah, let's give him more money in more years when they didn't need to. And Trent Williams at 37 years old, same thing, 2 years left on the deal, no guaranteed money, 25 and 26, but a lot of base salary. So anything short of a catastrophic injury in training camp, the Niners were not going to get rid of 2 of John Lynch's and Kyle Shanahan's favorite players in Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, 2 players that they traded for that are top 3 players at their position. I don't know if there's any animosity with the McCaffrey deal, but the Trent Williams deal was discussed as Trent and his agent being savage in terms of what they were looking for. And the tackle market exploded last offseason, like every positional market does basically every season, offseason. And Williams saw what other tackles were getting. He and his agent didn't seem to care about his age, and I guess the Niners didn't either. So he's under contract now with the top 5 tackle salary, under contract for 2025 and 2026. And there's no guarantee he plays beyond this year. There isn't. I mean, whether he gets injured, and knock on wood he doesn't, or doesn't, he's going to be 38 years old relatively soon, or sometime this season, I think. No guarantees there. McCaffrey is signed through 2027, but the bump in the cap hit goes up exponentially. So they're going to have to rework something or make him a third down back or cut some salary, whatever it may be. But we don't have to worry about that for the next 2 seasons. We knew it was coming, guys. We knew it was coming. They went for it since 2019, since they got to the Super Bowl and lost the first time to the Chiefs. They had the bad COVID year after that, but they've been on the doorstep, right? And as a fan, that's all you can ask, to know that you're one of maybe the 6 teams in the NFL that before the season starts, you feel really good about not only making the playoffs, but making the conference title game in the Super Bowl. That's all you can ask for from ownership and the players of the team that you root for. Now, does it suck that they didn't close the deal and win the Super Bowl? Of course. But they don't, organizations don't owe us anything, right? Sometimes the better team wins. Sometimes you could have a bad game. It's still a successfully run organization. Anybody out there that says, well, they didn't win the Super Bowl, so it's a shit team and it's a failure, you can look at it like that. But the Giants are a failure. The Jets are a failure. The Panthers are a failure. The Raiders are a failure. The Titans are a failure. The Colts are a failure. The Niners are not a failure. And if you're going to lump, if everyone's going to lump, or certain fans are going to lump every team together that just because they didn't win the Super Bowl, then you are going to live a depressing and miserable sports existence, because you probably feel that way about other sports teams as well. Off the soapbox. I want to try to say this in a way where it's not going to sound egotistical or patting myself on the back at all. But if you have listened to the podcast or watched me on YouTube, you're going to know what I'm about to say is true. And if you're new to the podcast or watching me on YouTube, welcome. Hope we have you for the duration of today's show and in the future. Appreciate you making the time. But I nailed what was going to happen in free agency to the San Francisco 49ers. I am no savant. I am not brilliant. I don't have a crystal ball. I've said before, you cannot take me to Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and any of this would carry over to anything profitable. But I can see things rationally. I can look at things rationally. I can process information pretty darn well. And it's not that I was taking John Lynch at face value, because coaches and GMs, we're in lying season, right? Free agency, it's going to get even more dubious the closer we get to the draft. But following the team for as long as I have, and following the team more closely the past 3 years since I've had this podcast, I think I have a really good sense of what the team is trying to do, and when it makes sense to get rid of someone, or when it makes sense to not re-sign someone, or when it makes sense to not sign free agents from other teams. And we're just going to go down the list with the first 7 that I nailed. Debo. I called Debo leaving this offseason in 2023. Because, and if you've been listening to the podcast, you know I've said this. I don't say this every podcast, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I just want to express it. The plan was always going to be to extend Ayuk and somehow get rid of Debo this offseason. Why? He's been a declining player since his all-pro year in 2021. The Niners cannot afford at that time, or now, as we've seen, to pay heavy salaries for the same player, or different players at the same position. Not going to happen. It's literally not happening on the team. And I don't think it's a good way to build a roster unless you get really, really lucky on another side of the ball and you just go all cheap or all rookies or all bargain basement free agents. But chances are that's not going to even get you into the playoffs on average. So Debo's gone. Am I worried about replacing his 690 receiving yards? No. I think Pearsall can do that. I think Demarcus Robinson, who came in, can do that. I am not worried about Debo's production. He's going to have good games for the Commanders. He's going to have highlight-worthy games with the Commanders, but he is a declining player, and he was never going to be extended. The only reason to keep Debo this season was because Ayuk's coming off the knee injury, and in case he's not ready until in the September or October, I thought it was a good hedge. And then Debo leaves at the end of 2025, and you get a comp pick for him. Debo's market didn't materialize as much as we thought it would, getting a 5th-round pick from the Commanders. But then again, Christian Kirk, who I would take every day of the week over Debo Samuel at this point in their respective careers, was traded to the Texans for a 7th-round pick. So go figure. Debo's never going to get extended. There was no reason to extend a soon-to-be 30-year-old receiver, or at the end of the season, 30 years old. So he had to go. Whether he was going to get cut or traded, he had to go. It was the right decision. Aaron Banks at offensive line, at left guard, he was never returning. When you saw the reports that, he might get between $18 and $20 million annually, I think we all scoffed at that. But what did he do? He got 4 years, $77 million, almost $20 million a year from Green Bay, which I know it's really just the guaranteed money, but that came true. In no universe was Aaron Banks coming back. That was easy to see. And when Ben Barch re-signed about a month ago, it completely shut the door on Aaron Banks. The door was never open. The door was deadbolted. The screen door was locked also, and someone wound up putting a chair at an angle under the doorknob, so there's no way Aaron Banks could get in. Easy to see. Charvarius Ward at cornerback. Even if he didn't have that tragedy with his infant child dying and saying, there's, bad memories in San Francisco, and I don't think I can come back here, he still was not coming back here. Why? Because Diamador Lenore got paid his extension, $15 million a year, and Renardo Green played really well as a rookie, and rookies are cheap. Yes, they need a number 3 cornerback, and they might have satisfied that in free agency already, but they're definitely going to be drafting a corner or 2. Ward got 3 years, $60 million from the Colts. Good for him. For everybody getting money. There was no way the Niners were going to pay 2 cornerbacks heavy money. No way. Talanoa Hufanga, safety, had, like Debo, one very good year, one all-pro year. After that, injury prone, good tackler, takes bad angles at times, not really a playmaker, not a center fielder, which I think they need more so than an interchangeable safety, just to complement Malik Mustafa a little bit more. Had the ACL, wrist injury, only played a couple games this season, went to Denver, 3 years, $45 million. No way were the Niners going to give him $15 million a year. No way were they going to give him $7 or $8 million a year. Dre Greenlaw, I know this is the one that hurts the most, and I understand why. The Niners, per reports, offered him a 1-year, $10 million prove-it deal. And for any fans out there saying, come back, and, Warner, running mates, another run at a Super Bowl, this, and I kept saying, well, he can go to Washington before they re-signed Bobby Wagner, and they were farther along than San Francisco was, playing in the NFC Championship game this past year. Denver, who he went to for 3 years, $35 million, about $12 million a year, made the playoffs and got rolled by Buffalo, and they already had a pretty good defense, and they're adding 2 good players, but they're 2 players that are well outside of what San Francisco was going to pay, especially being injury prone, and especially Dre Greenlaw. He's missed a third of the games he's played in. Third. That's not something that you can look the other way at this point, right? He's gone. Debo, Banks, Ward, Huff, Greenlaw, all knew they were going to be gone. Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, nice player. They let him go before this free agency officially started, a couple days before that. I knew he was going to be gone. Javon Hargrave, they told us this over a month ago. I knew before that, based on what his cap hit was and what they could save monetarily, that he was going to go. And he's since signed with the Vikings, 2 years, 30 million. I think it was like 18 million guaranteed. Is he worth that? 31 years old when you're trying to get younger? I know defensive line and D tackle specifically is an issue. I get it. We're going to get to that. He's not worth that money for this team. The Vikings gave out a crap ton of contracts. And here's the reason why. J.J. McCarthy's their quarterback. They don't, unless they bring in Aaron Rodgers, which I doubt, they need to make sure J.J. McCarthy, who is an unknown entity, have literally no idea what he is at the pro level. So you might as well surround him with as much, you want to call it talent or high-priced talent as they can. And Kevin O'Connell is obviously a good offensive mind. Aaron Jones coming back. TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Addison, like a pretty good line. They have some weapons. If JJ McCarthy is not even 2/3 of what Sam Darnold was last year, it's not going to matter. And the last one that I nailed was Jalen Moore. There was no way they were going to re-sign him. When it was discussed that Jalen Moore might get borderline starter tackle salary, no chance. And the Chiefs signed him for 2 years and $30 million. $15 million a year for Jalen Moore. I don't think people really realize how much of a bargain Colton McKivitz is. I know people have an issue with him, don't like him, want him gone. He's not making $15 million a year and playing like that. He's making less than 4. I think it might even be less than 3 or 3.5 compared to 15. Good for these players that got their money. I'm happy they did. But these are not players to me that are worth those contracts for the 49ers. Debo being older, the injury proneness of Huff and Hufanga. Ward's going to be 30 years old. Banks was never worth it. Hargrave's 31. Jalen Moore was a backup. And great that he's getting promoted to starter quality or position with the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs also signed Eli Mitchell. I thought maybe that there was a possibility that he could come back, since I know he's also injury prone, but he would have been cheaper than Jordan Mason, who we're going to talk about in a few minutes. He got 1 year up to $3.5 million with the Chiefs. A good running back when he's healthy. When he's healthy being the issue. Isaac Yiadom was someone I thought, I listed, I think, like 6 players that I thought could return to San Francisco. And Isaac Yiadom was one of them. Could. Niners signed a cornerback in free agency that they like better. Yiadom went back to New Orleans, 3 years, $9 million. That's not an onerous contract. If the Niners signed Yiadom 2 or 3 years, 2 years, $6 million, or 3 years, $9 million, would any of us be that upset? That's not a bad contract at all. Long snapper Tabor Pepper got cut, which was interesting. And the quarterbacks, Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. I knew Josh Dobbs wasn't coming back, so I got that one right. He thought he won the backup quarterback job in camp. I tended to agree with him. I don't think he liked what happened. Wasn't going to return. He's now with the Patriots. Brandon Allen, I wanted no part of, and I didn't think he was going to return. Did not look good in his only start at Green Bay. He's just a guy. Now he's with Tennessee along with Will Levis, who's another just a guy. So got the quarterback position right as well. Now, I didn't agree with all the moves. Now, here are some that I thought were curious. Kyle Juszczyk. Now, I said in my last podcast that I would like to see him return because he serves, obviously, the fullback role. He is a matchup issue with linebackers in terms of receiving. And he has been the de facto number 2 tight end from a receiving standpoint, having more receptions than any 49er tight end not named George Kittle in the last 4 seasons. Salary was over $4 million. Cap hit was over 6, 34 years old. I thought, maybe there's a way to reconcile, if you want to call it that, or take a pay cut and come back. It's humbling. He took a pay cut last offseason, didn't want to take another one. I think he was visiting with the Ravens today or yesterday, and I hope he gets signed. I hope it's not a situation where he gets cut, he goes to another team, and he's making less on another team than he would with San Francisco. You see that with sports all the time. players that don't want to take a pay cut and it happens and they go somewhere for less. It's got to be humbling, right? It's got to be humbling to ask to take a pay cut. But he's got a lot of friends on that team. And I'm sure to a certain capacity or at a certain price, Kyle and John would have wanted him. He's going to be, I know he's 34, but he's durable. He's been a durable player for them. And his replacement is not the new tight end that signed, which we're going to get to. It's Braden Willis. Or they could bring another, obviously, fullback in free agency or the draft. As it stands right now on the roster, Braden Willis is your leader in the clubhouse to be a fullback. Same measurables as Juice for whatever that's worth. Played straight up tight end at Oklahoma. Has been like a move tight end with San Francisco when he's been getting playing time if he's not on the practice squad. I think he could fill that role relatively well. But it's not the new tight end from the Jaguars. A lot of people are saying, oh, that's Juice's replacement. It's not. That's tight end 2. We're going to get there momentarily. Malik Collins, 30 years old, played all 17 games, was durable for this team, had 5 sacks, cut to save cash, and they wanted to get younger. Plus, they got to get better at the interior tackle positions. I said last podcast and the podcast before that, here's where I was half right. I said there's no guarantee that any of the D tackles on the roster or who are signed, which at that point would have been Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Evan Anderson as an exclusive rights free agent is coming back. Kevin Givens was a free agent. He's returning. We're going to get to that in a second. Like, there's no guarantee that if someone comes in free agency who's better, or they draft a player or two that's better, that Collins or Elliott would be gone, because the interior of that line was that bad. They decided to cut the older, more expensive player. But curious in terms of some of the production, but the Niners need to get better on the D line. And the same goes for Leonard Floyd, right? Came over from the Bills, one of the bigger acquisitions last off season. Older, 33 years old, again, played in all 17 games, had 8.5 sacks. So a couple things here. When you look at those numbers, you're like, all right, well, why did they let him go? So he's a smaller D end, 240, compared to Bosa, who's like a 265, Yetur Gross-Matos, 265, and probably some of the DNs that they may be looking to bring in the draft, or if they're looking at anyone in free agency, probably a bit more stout than Leonard Floyd. Out of 64 defensive ends, Leonard Floyd's pass rush win rate ranked 55th, even with the 8.5 sacks. And his run defense, he ranked 55th also, again, out of 64 defensive ends. Not good. Good player. Listen, good football player. I think the Niners and Saleh want to do something maybe schematically differently or body type wise differently than what Leonard Floyd would offer. The most curious aspect about this is letting Floyd go before they possibly could have signed Joey Bosa. And even if they signed Joey Bosa, I would have been like, well, just keep Floyd. Let's stack on edge rusher on top of edge rusher, regardless of, pass rush rankings, run D rankings, just to rush the passer. Figure out the interior D line and free agency in the draft and whoever you may bring back. Because who knows who's going to get hurt, OTAs, training camp, preseason games, joint practices. It's a thing with the Niners, right? Injuries. And then I said, if you want to make a decision in September, Floyd or Yetur Gross-Matos, because there's some good savings to be had there, cash and cap wise, cut him in September. There's no rush to cut anybody now when you don't know how your roster is going to look through the summertime, right? Injuries especially. Maybe they did him a solid, let him go earlier, went to Atlanta, and the Niners did not get Joey Bosa either. So curious, but it was a Floyd or Gross-Matos type of potential release in September in my mind, that at least one of them at least came to fruition a lot earlier. All right. So players that were retained. Ben Barch, we knew this for about a month. I've been saying this for probably 3 months or 4 months. He got a 1-year, $3.3 million deal. Compare that to Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks is making, what is that, 10 times as much as Ben Bartch is going to make. And Ben Bartch might be the better player. Might be, for Chris Forrester in that line, the better player. If not, he's awfully close. And if you're awfully close, or 80 to 90% of Aaron Banks, and you're there for 10% of the cost, that is a value win. Patrick Taylor, in my podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, I ranked him as the number one most likely to return player on offense. He's back for now. Does not mean he's going to make the 53-man roster. I did not say he was going to make the 53-man roster, but he is back. And if he is running back 4 on this team, or a practice squad running back, I'm totally okay with that. And the last one that I called out specifically as someone to return, linebacker Curtis Robinson, coming off of an ACL reconstruction. They're going to throw bodies at the linebacker problem next to Fred Warner. D. Winters, Curtis Robinson, Jalen Graham, Tatum Bethune, someone from they're going to draft somebody. They brought a free agent in who's more of a special teamer that has started at linebacker as well. And just to go back to the Dre Greenlaw thing, in terms of, why didn't he return? Because they have Fred Warner, right? I just want to stress this about the whole not going to pay 2 players at the same position heavy money. If Fred Warner didn't exist or was gone and they had to maybe choose one as a free agent, I would still choose Fred Warner. But if he had a career-ending injury this past season, let's say, the Niners would have re-signed Dre Greenlaw. But they have Fred Warner. Dre Greenlaw is a luxury, not a need. And if you're going to say, oh, yeah, yes, he is. He's an absolute. No, he's not. Fixing the D-line is the need. Getting better production out of your D tackles is the need to shore up the run defense. And if you want an example, look no further than Zach Bone of the Eagles, career special teamer in New Orleans, goes to Philadelphia, becomes an all-pro, and re-signed a 3-year pretty nice contract with them because he's playing in front of a really good and really nasty defensive line. You think if Zach Bone was on another team, he would have been an all-pro, or he would have gotten this contract or been a starter? No. Situations and the teams, the defenses, the D coordinators like a Vic Fangio that you're playing with or under matter. Dre Greenlaw is a good player, but he's a big question mark. And the bigger question mark is the D-line, which needs to be addressed. And it's going to make whoever is next to Fred Warner look either good or better than they are. Now, the 2 curious ones to me were Kevin Givens, coming back on a 1-year deal, small, 6'1", 6'2", 285, smaller-ish defensive lineman. Now, at this point, you need bodies because it's Kevin Givens, it's Jordan Elliott, and it's Evan Anderson, who signed as an exclusive rights free agent. Someone else is going to come in free agency, if it's in the next week or 2 or later on. They're probably going to draft 2 defensive tackles. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 undrafted rookie free agent D tackles. There is time to build the line. But I thought, and Givens coming back, it's a youth play over Malik Collins, and it's a cheaper play over Malik Collins. So let's not be surprised again by this. And Jordan Mason, the Niners extending the second round tender for about $5 million. I like Jordan Mason. He runs like an animal, like he's angry. Worked on his hands some, although he didn't get, many opportunities, got nicked up, did miss some time. But I thought all things being equal, and this happened, I think, after the Patrick Taylor signing, McCaffrey, who's now, another, when OTA starts, going to be another 4 months away from his PCL injury, another 4 months recovered more so from the bilateral Achilles tendonitis. If it was McCaffrey, Guarendo, and Patrick Taylor, and they do have Israel Bonaconda on the roster, we've been okay, more than okay, with those 4 rolling into the season. And the way that Kyle does not want to platoon backs, he's come out and said it, that's not how we play as a team. And he's been true to it. When it was McCaffrey, it was McCaffrey. When it was Mason, it was just Mason. When it was Guarendo, it was just Guarendo. And when it was Taylor against the Cardinals, end of the season, week 18, it was just Patrick Taylor. Now, of course, other running backs got a couple carries, but we're not talking about a 15-8 or 17-10 split. That's not what Kyle wants to do. So to devote a guaranteed $5 million to a player who you would think in a way Isaac Guarendo was drafted and showed out well enough to be the number 2 behind McCaffrey, that not that Jordan Mason was redundant or irrelevant, but Jordan Mason at $5 million guaranteed dollars is curious. Now, where it makes sense is he's a good player, and you want to collect good players. And the running back room has been bitten by the injury bug. And if they keep 4, and it is McCaffrey, Guarendo, Mason, and Taylor or Abanikanda, fine. But I wonder if there's the possibility that no one's trading a second-round pick for Jordan Mason, and he might not get traded until after the draft, until a team maybe doesn't get the running back they're looking for. There aren't great running back options in free agency. Rico Dowdle, former running back of the Cowboys, is now with the Panthers. I don't know if that gets anybody excited. So Mason, maybe he gets traded later on, and maybe they work out a deal where a team doesn't have to give the Niners a second-round pick. Maybe it's a third, a fourth, a fifth. Maybe it's a fifth next year that could turn into a fourth based on Mason hitting some statistical or playing time incentives. I don't know how hard and fast this second round pick rule is for this tender. And if Mason's on the team, I'm fine with that too. I'm happy with that. In fact, just curious, the cost versus how many carries he actually may not get if McCaffrey and Guarendo are healthy. Now, the arrivals, I didn't nail the players, but I nailed the positions because it's. I think if it was obvious to me, I think it's obvious to a lot of you out there. First, tight end Luke Farrell from the Jaguars, 3 years, $20 million. Maybe a little high for a tight end too. And again, guys, tight end too, this is not Juice's replacement at all. Good blocker, has about as many receptions the past couple years each year that you would come to expect from a backup 49er tight end or Kyle Juszczyk, as it were, but they need a tight end too. And there's no way on any earth in any parallel dimension that Kyle would be comfortable with a rookie as a tight end too. No chance. The only other tight ends on the roster, Jake Tonjes and Braden Willis, and Mason Pline, rookie undrafted free agent. Doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Now, remember, though, last season, the Niners put out an offer sheet to Lions tight end Brock Wright, 3 years, $12 million. I mean, inflation's a bitch, right? From 3 for 12 million now to 3 for 20. So $4 million a year to about almost 7. But the Niners and Kyle need a tight end too. This isn't going to be a 40 reception tight end. If he gets to 20, I'll be surprised. The way Kyle does not employ multiple tight ends in terms of patterns, but this is a blocker. This is going to be a blocking tight end with some receiving ability. And I would imagine they're going to draft somebody in the middle rounds that could be that learning tight end 3, or it's Jake Tonjes, or maybe Braden Willis does make the 53 as the fullback, but could play tight end in a pinch. So tight end 2, we knew was a need. Wide receiver, knew was a need because of Ayuk and Chris Conley was gone. And I knew it was going to be a veteran, right? Devontae Adams, there was no chance at that. They weren't trading for T. Higgins. They're not going after Stephon Diggs. Amari Cooper, not Cooper Kupp. Nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. None of it made sense. But a veteran on a 2-year, $9.5 million deal to replace Debo's receiving production, and he's a faster receiver, and he's a better route runner, and a bigger frame, bigger catch radius. He's not going to do the Debo gadget stuff. I say give it to Cowing, or if they draft a receiver or use a running back for that, that's fine. That's totally fine. But a veteran receiver is something that I knew had to happen in free agency. DeMarcus Robinson, 2 years, $9.5 million. Now, there is this DUI thing hanging over his head that he might not be available to start the beginning of the regular season. I'm hoping Lynch and company looked into that. But it's a 2-year deal, and the 2 years is important, one, because it's, $4.75 million a year, which is really nothing for a receiver. I mean, when you're seeing Darius, people said, oh, they should sign Darius Slayton. He got over $12 million a year from the Giants. And I was saying last podcast, everyone's going to get more than we think. And everybody did, except for the people that the Niners are signing, but that's fine. At some point, you do have to course correct. Now, the 2 years, though, is important because Juwan Jennings, 2025, this is the last year he's under contract. So if they're not able to re-sign him and Jennings has another good, close to 1,000-yard season, he's going to get a Darius Slayton type contract, and that's not going to be from San Francisco. So DeMarcus Robinson not only replaces Debo this year, could replace Juwan Jennings next year. Quarterback, Mac Jones, and he was my preferred quarterback to come aboard. I didn't know if he was actually going to get here. Again, like I said, I knew Dobbs was gone, and I was praying Brandon Allen was going to be gone. The only other one I would have really considered was Gardner Minshew. Mac Jones, 2 years, $7 million. Great deal for someone with this much starting experience. Obviously, highly drafted. We're going to get into that for a second. Earlier today, I saw that Tyler Heineke, and I don't recall what team that he signed with, but signed a contract 1 year worth up to $6.3 million. Mac Jones is here for $3.5 million a year. I know everyone's going to talk about the discussion of 2021 when the Niners traded up. Did Kyle really want Mac Jones? Was he talked into Trey Lance? If anybody thinks in terms of personnel on offense at quarterback that anyone was going to talk Kyle Shanahan into anything, you're nuts. He was probably trying to figure out, do I want a pocket passer? Do I want someone who can run? Sorta, but not be accurate, like Trey Lance, and he's probably not going to have a job this season. This is not I finally got Mac Jones because I really wanted him. He wanted Trey Lance more. If he wanted Mac Jones, he would have drafted Mac Jones. And this is not a leverage play for Brock. Brock's going to get paid. The Niners can play hardball all they want, but you can't be a dick to your franchise quarterback. Again, Josh Allen, another one, got extended. Didn't hear anything about it. Why is it the Niners that this shit has to go public or be made a minor spectacle? Hurts got extended. No big deal. Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, they just get extended. But it's got to be something, whether it's drama or discussions or leaks or whatever. Doesn't matter. Mac Jones is QB2. Tanner Mordecai is probably going to be QB3 if they keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, or if they draft a rookie in the 6th or 7th round or an undrafted rookie that beats Tanner Mordecai out. Mac Jones is no threat to Brock Purdy in any way, shape, or form. Cornerback, I knew they had to go for veteran cornerback Trey Brown for a 1-year deal from Seattle. They're going to draft a cornerback come April. They'll probably bring another one in. They might bring another one in free agency, but they need another veteran, right? Because right now the team is Demo, Renardo Green, and Darrell Luter. They're going to carry 5 or 6 on the 53-man roster. They're probably going to have 9 or 10 cornerbacks in camp. Got to start building to 90. I keep saying it. Got to start building to 90. Trey Brown was the first step in that direction. And in terms of safeties, I've been saying the past couple podcasts that while they may draft a rookie safety, it makes the most sense to bring in a veteran to play alongside Malik Mustafa. Now, the first was Richie Grant from the Falcons that they signed, more of a special teams player, but a veteran, been in the league 4+ seasons. Next, they signed Jason Pinnock, who was a converted cornerback. Here's something funny. And safety with the Giants the last 3 years. Drafted by Robert Saleh in 2021. And there are people, touting or beating their chest. Oh, he's, reunited with Robert Saleh. That's why they picked him up. Okay. He played 1 year, his rookie year with the Jets, and then got waived. and was picked up with the Giants, stuck there for 3 years, and the Niners signed him as a free agent to a 1-year deal. Now, the Jets might have been doing something like, with the Niners with DJ Reed, however many years ago, going to release him. Hopefully we can get him back, and it didn't happen. But if he was that good of a player, you don't waive him, hurt or not. But he has versatility. Now, he could easily be a starting corner, play some center field, but he could also play corner. Play starting safety, but could also potentially play outside corner as a backup to Green or Demo. And there's discussions that, not discussions, but apparently former Brown safety Juan Thornhill is visiting San Francisco. And if they sign him too, then now becomes like, how many safeties do you need? Like, what are we actually doing here? Right now, signing Grant and Pinnock means George Odom's job is in jeopardy. I don't think Jair Brown is going anywhere. If nothing else, he's young and cheap. And we know that Kyle and John, or at least John and York and Prague, want that. But if they bring in a third safety, I think George Odom is all but gone. Richie Grant can take over whatever those special team snaps are going to be. And these are players, at least in Pinnock, and if Thornhill comes over, that has starting experience, that could battle it out to start alongside Mustafa. And then lastly, 2 special team signings, linebacker Luke Gifford and long snapper John Weeks, both for special teams. Fine. Now let's conclude, before we get into this whole notion of a rebuild, about pipe dreams. And again, these are 5 players that, again, I'm not trying to sound anything other than just letting you know that I got this stuff right. Drew Dahlman, Falcons center. Everybody and their mother, maybe some grandmothers and second cousins as well, banging the drum. Drew Dahlman. They got to sign Drew Dahlman. They were never, ever going to give Drew Dahlman what he got from the Bears. What was it, $14 million a year? Yes, Kyle likes veteran centers, from Weston Richburg to Alex Mack to Jake Brendel, but it's going to be either Jake Brendel or Matt Hennessy, more than likely, as the starting center. They were not going to spend that much money any other year, but especially this year with what the philosophy is. That's what you may not like the fact that they're maybe not spending a lot of money, but you also cannot be surprised by it. They're signing players, guys. They've signed 7 players from outside the organization. 5 more from inside the organization, a bunch of exclusive rights free agents. A couple of those are going to make the 53. They're signing players, but big money does not equate to good player or successful player. We could just point to Javon Hargrave as an example of that, or that they're going to stick. Floyd signed for 2 years, gone after 1. They're being more cautious and more judicious, and a more cumulative reason why I'll get to in a minute or two. Jonathan Allen from the Commanders, people banging the drum on that, missed a bunch of time last year, 30 years old, got a whole lot of money from, the Vikings? There was no chance. DJ Jones, former Niner with the Broncos. And I know people have this love affair because I think people feel like a spurned lover. They go somewhere else. Come on back home. I'll welcome you back home. I'm pining for you. Too good of a player. But again, 30. So the young and not cheap. I think he got $13 million a year from Denver, 3 for 39, something like that. Never going to happen. Just like DJ Reed, cornerback with the Jets, played under Saleh, was a former Niner. Saleh's a defensive coordinator now. People are connecting the dots. But it's like you're connecting the dots with no pen or pencil. You're just tracing it with your finger. There was no path that led DJ Reed to San Francisco unless he came on a massive discount. And cornerbacks do not come on a massive discount. The quality of DJ Reed, right? Like, I'm not saying Trey Brown from the Seahawks is DJ Reed, but the Niners were not going to get DJ Reed. He's with the Lions. I think he got $14 million per year. And Joey Bosa was the only maybe of the bunch. And that was only because Nick Bosa was playing here. And I said, the only way that I think they signed Joey Bosa, I think they probably go up to $10 million. Maybe they give him, I don't know, if it was 1 year, maybe $3-4 million of that guaranteed, and the rest tied to per game roster bonuses. Per reports, the Niners sounds like they went up to $10 million for a year. Buffalo went to 12.6, more guaranteed money. He went to Buffalo. Now he could, if he has a healthy season, he may still think like, oh, I got a chance next year to play with Nick. So maybe it happens. And the Bills, off an AFC Championship game appearance, optically are in a better position than San Francisco, maybe to him, to ring Chase. That's fine. But Dahlman, Allen, Jones, Reed, Bosa, we'll throw Devontae Adams in there. People thought that was no, guys. No. So we'll stop with my batting average. I'm sure, I know hopefully maybe you're tired of hearing about it, but for whatever reason, and maybe the reason is just being so close to the team, doing so much research, understanding what they want to do, and not being an emotional fan and just saying, listen, all right, they're going to be cutting some salary. And the thing that I wanted to say, what I said earlier about like some cumulative wrap up here was the Niners are eating a lot of cap this year, and people are making a big deal. The most dead cap in the league, what it was like over 75 million or whatever it may be. So what? They're still 44 million under the cap. They're still going to field a team. They're still going to field I think a really good team in my opinion. And they're still going to roll cap over to next year. And eating a lot of cap this year frees up a lot of cap next year. This was a cut cash, eat cap year, a roster transition year, not a transition year for the franchise, but a roster transition year to get a little bit younger, to get cheaper, stop doling out the cash, or at least slow it down, get younger, hopefully get faster. And they are no longer the oldest team in the league, right? Debo 30, Ward 30, Hargrave 31, Yadam close to 30. I mean, Tabor Pepper was in his 30s. Allen and Dobbs in their 30s. Juice 34. Collins 30. Floyd 33. They're keeping Barch, Taylor Robinson, like younger player. Like they've gotten younger. You can almost say overnight, but since Monday, and they're going to bring in, let's say, 8 rookies that are going to make the roster. 8 out of 53 is what? 1/7 thereabouts. They are achieving what they sent out to do, whether you may agree with it or not, or are complaining that this isn't Madden, that you just can't turn the salary cap off. They are doing what they set out to, I think, in a responsible way. People that are out there like a Ryan Clark saying, well, if it's a rebuild, they should trade McCaffrey. Well, you know why they're not going to trade McCaffrey? Because it's not a fucking rebuild. You know who's rebuilding? The Jets, the Browns, the Titans, the Colts, the Raiders, the Giants, the Panthers, and I'll even throw in the Saints. Are we going to lump the Niners roster in with those 8 sorry as a sack of shit franchises? It's a yes or no answer. It's not maybe. The answer is no. Against every one of those rosters. No. You don't use the word rebuild when you still have multiple key Pro Bowl, All-Pro, cornerstone, franchise type players or ascending young good players. And in case you forgot who they are, on offense, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Dominic Pooney, Brandon Ayuk, coming off of injury, but he's going to play some point this year and hopefully sooner than later, and Juwan Jennings. On defense, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, and Malik Mustafa as the 2 young ascending players. So if you agree with me that all of those players are good to above, good to great, good to All-Pro, good to Pro Bowl, good to franchise cornerstone building block core players, then that means 12 of their 22 starters on offense and defense represent good or above players, or very good or above players. Tell me in what world that is a rebuild. You want to call it a retweaking, a retooling, a reshuffling of the roster. If you're so hard up on using a word that starts with RE. Knock yourself out. But it's not a rebuild. Let's keep it with the Niners. If 2025 is a rebuild, then what the fuck was 2017? Kyle and John's first year. What was that? That was a rebuild, wasn't it? Coming off of a 2-14 season. Yeah, Niners are coming off a 6-11. A lot of that a good amount of that due to injury, a good amount of that due to Nick Sorensen, a good amount of that doing like the defense not playing as well as they should have. All that being said, and I've said it before, they should have won at least 8 games. They should have been an 8-9 or 9-8 team. Then I could have said, wow, Sorensen and all the players they were missing. Yeah, they probably would have won 2 or 3 more games if they just had better injury luck. But let's go back to 2017 now, right? We're talking between 7 and 8 years, where their free agency consisted of Brian Hoyer. That was Juice's first year. At receiver, you had Pierre Garçon, Marquise Goodwin, Aldrick Robinson coming in. You had Logan Paulson coming in at tight end. Matt Barkley is one of the backup quarterbacks. Remember that? Quan Williams came over for a 1-year deal. So, all right, there was an okay signing there. Robbie Gould's first year with the team. Malcolm Smith from the Seahawks at linebacker who lasted 1 year. Tim Hightower, remember the old Cardinals running back? Wasn't even old at the time, but couldn't make it on this team. And then a handful of absolute no-names. And then you go to the draft. Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster in the first round, busts. Kilo Witherspoon, bust until this past year with the Rams. CJ Beathard took an absolute beating. You got to give him credit for that at quarterback. Joe Williams, running back out of Utah, never played with the team. Miss of a 4th-round pick. Kittle in the 5th, obviously All-Pro, future Hall of Famer. Trent Taylor was okay for 4 years. DJ Jones, good player for 4 years until he went to the Broncos. Peta Tamuapunu, a DN from Utah, never made the team. And Adrian Colbert, safety from Miami, who made the team and was on it for a couple years. Then undrafted rookie free agents, you had the likes of Nick Mullins, Matt Breida, and Kendrick Bourne. This was a talent bereft team, guys. This was a rebuild. You want to use that word? Let's go through the starters on O&D. Offense, Brian Hoyer, Carlos Hyde at running back, Juice at fullback. Receivers, Garçon and Goodwin. Garrett Selleck was the tight end. Remember, Kittle didn't start. Kyle doesn't play rookies. Kittle didn't start. Offensive line, Joe Staley, Laken Tomlinson, Daniel Kilgore, Brandon Fusco, and Trent Brown, who they quickly jettisoned in the offseason. Defensive starters, Eric Armstead, Earl Mitchell at D tackle, DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas. At linebacker, Eli Harold, Reuben Foster, and Brock Covey. I don't even remember that guy. Corners, Akilo Witherspoon, and of course, Dante Johnson. Safeties, Eric Reed and Jimmy Ward. So in 2022, if we said 2025, this upcoming season, that they had or have 12 of 22 offensive and defensive starters are good or better players. In 2017, all they had was Staley, Juice, Armstead, Buckner, and Ward. 2025 is not a rebuild. The teams I mentioned, Jets, Giants, Raiders, Colts, they're in rebuild mode, guys. Niners are not. This is not a rebuilding year. Just want to address quickly the fans, the whining, and even by the media. What are the Niners doing? Their O-line, their D-line. 4 days into free agency. 4 fucking days. And this is the first week where everybody gets overpaid. There is something called week 2 of free agency, week 3 of free agency, month 2 of free agency, month 3, and a draft. It's not over yet. And when I see these people on Twitter making these asinine comments as if free agency is over and the Niners can't add any more players, my response is, well, I guess it's a good thing there are no games this weekend that the Niners have, right? And they got 5+ months to fill out their roster, which they are going to do. And there's work to do. Of course there is. Mention D tackle that there's only 3 signed on the roster. They're going to bring in 1 or 2 in free agency later on when the market cools. And they're going to bring in 2 from the draft. Remember, only 5 D tackles are going to make the 53 at most. It could be 4, but it should be 5. D ends, they'll probably bring 1 in free agency at some point, and 1 or 2 in the draft. Again, 4 or 5 D ends at max are going to make the roster. Cornerback, they got 1 in free agency in Trey Brown. Maybe Jason Pinnock could, if he's not a safety, could play some corner, although I'm sure he's slotted for safety. A corner's coming in the draft, or 2. O-line, somebody in free agency, they're going to sign somebody. Some cheap guard, some cheap center, something they will sign, and they're going to draft 2 offensive linemen. They're not going to draft 4, any of these ridiculous mock drafts we're seeing. No. Linebacker, someone's coming in. So someone did come in, more playing special teams, but I'm sure another linebacker is going to come in, a veteran, and they're going to draft somebody, I would say in the 3rd or 4th round as a potential starter next to Fred Warner. I am not a glass half full person. I am not an optimist. I'm also not a negative person. I'm a pragmatist. I'm try to be logical. I try to be objective. This may not be a top 3 roster anymore in the league, but I could say top 7, top 10, because they still have so many very good to blue chip players. The problem was they were a bit top heavy. They were a bit older. They were a bit injury prone at times. And they've gotten rid of some, not all, because if you want to call McCaffrey injury prone, I mean, I guess you could if you want to, but they got rid of the majority of those players. And people were complaining about depth during the season. They made some signings for depth or re-signings for depth, and people are complaining about that. They were never going to be in the jackpot. They hit the jackpot during the season when they extended Diamador Lenore. It was sexy and exciting at the time, but when free agency hits and fans, comparison being the thief of joy, looking at other teams, what they're doing, why can't we sign that player? Because that's not the Niners' philosophy right now. But the big splash was Demo, and another splash is going to be Brock. Remember, that's coming, and they have to earmark money for that. Although his cap hit the first year is probably going to be no more than $17 to $20 million. So they have plenty of cap for Brock. They're going to need about $10 million or $11 million or a little bit more for their draft picks. That's if they make 11, which they're not. They're probably going to make 9 picks. I truly believe that if this team is healthy-ish or has some sort of luck health between what we saw in 2023 and last year, this team's going to win 10 or 11 games. They have the easiest schedule in the league. And I don't think any of the teams in the NFC South or the AFC South that they're going to be playing, Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks, Jaguars, Titans, Colts, Texans, have made significant improvements that they're like a tough out now. And the NFC West, all right, the Rams might be a problem. Young, up-and-coming defense. They brought Devontae Adams in for Cooper Kupp. They did lose DeMarcus Robinson to San Francisco. They have obviously Stafford at quarterback, Kyren Williams at running back. But remember with the Rams and the Matt Stafford talk, and Stafford's held on a pedestal, and rightfully so, right? Brock Purdy's down year last year, 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, was Matt Stafford's average year with the Rams, and last year was 20 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. See, again, perspective and bias, how it comes in. Matt Stafford praise, 20 and 8. Brock Purdy, he needs the Avengers into that, 20 and 12. McVay, great play caller. Shanahan, great play caller. Stafford struggled mightily without Nakua and Kupp. They were terrible. They were a bad team, and he was a bad quarterback when he was missing his top 2 receivers. Who'd have thought? Stafford's allowed to struggle, but Brock's not. Seattle, brings in Sam Darnold. Goodbye, DK Metcalf. Goodbye, Tyler Lockett. And Arizona is just going to be a perpetual 500 team. The Niners are actually favored by one of the sports books to win the West. It's either San Francisco or the Rams. If you're listening to any moron saying the Niners are going to come in third or fourth in the West, could it happen? Sure, but that would have to be an injury-wrecked season again. We can't count on injuries. We can't predict injuries. Any prediction that any periodical, magazine, talking head is going to make between now and when the regular season starts, it's assuming every team is healthy, right? Obviously. And if the Niners are healthy-ish, this is a team that's going to win 10 or 11 games. I don't even think 12 will be out of the question. Super Bowl challenger? I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. The way the Eagles look, the way the Lions look. Vikings, will see what they are with McCarthy. The Packers, the Rams. Will the Bucs take a step forward? I mean, the AFC is still better than the NFC, but the Niners, until they prove otherwise, are not going to be held up there with the teams that Washington, I shouldn't leave them out there, that actually made the playoffs in the NFC. So that's going to conclude the podcast for today and this week. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Remember, everybody, free agency is ongoing. Just because they haven't signed enough players at a certain position yet does not mean at all that that's not going to be rectified by the end of March or the end of April or the end of May or the end of... There is time. There is time. I am a believer in what the Niners are doing. I am not taking everything with faith, and I don't agree with everything that they've done. But I understand the plan. I'm tracking what they are doing. And based on kind of my hits and misses, or at least the hits that I've had in terms of players I knew were going to be gone, players I knew were going to return, positions I thought they were going to sign in free agency, and those big name players that fans were clamoring for that I knew there was no chance in hell that they were going to be here. Hopefully that batting average translates to what I just said about the Niners being a 10, 11, or 12 win team. Still got 6 months to go to get there before we start the season, but we can only hope. So again, thank you so much for listening or watching. Whatever you're doing between now and when we speak again, stay happy, healthy, and safe. We will talk soon. Take care, everybody.